and welcome back to the afternoon session of the Business Show Virtual Summit, with thanks to our founding partner, Dell Technologies, Energy Partner Electric Ireland, and all our platinum partners, KPMG, IBEC, National Broadband Ireland, Equinix, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and Explio. I hope you received your lunch voucher from our partner Just Eat and had an opportunity to visit our programme partner stands in the exhibitor hall, and that you got to network over lunch. Now, on the Reflex stage, we have a panel discussion around the future of finance, starting with contributions from LinkedFinance and PayPal, moderated by Peter Oakes, CEO of Fintech Ireland. Whilst over on Reboot, there's a panel session on what is required to maintain, sustain, and accelerate growth in your business. Check it out, or stay with us, where Peter Oakes will now moderate the Future of Finance panel.
Well, you're very welcome to our session on the future of FinTech, and I'm delighted to be joined both by Annette Hickey of PayPal and also Niall Dorrian of LinkedFinance. I'll be coming back to both of them in just a minute to do their own introductions, and then we'll get underway on our session. Now, obviously what we're talking about, the name is captured in the title, but particularly what has been and what will be the impact on the future of finance, particularly fintech and payments, given the current COVID-19 pandemic crisis. Also, what lessons have we learned out of the crisis, and the team's experience in dealing with things such as changes in client behaviour, also in customer behaviour, and of course, running businesses, including an international business and a business which is domestic in Ireland but scaling overseas. So you're both very welcome, Niall and Annette. And before we kick off with you both, I'll just run through some observations just about what's happening in fintech. And it's been a very interesting week this week in fintech news. We've seen in various countries, including in Ireland and Australia, that actually customers or consumers are saving more money during the crisis. They're paying down debt. Australia reported there was actually a drop-off of credit card transactions overall, but they didn't break it down versus online versus those in store. We've also seen that the old checkbook is disappearing, so the digitisation of the economy continues. We have things like open banking hitting the radar in payments, or actually already on the radar for payments, given Payment Services Directive 2. Now, this current financial crisis is spawning new fintech and new opportunities, just like the last crisis did. And what's interesting, at that time of the last crisis, Niall's business LinkedFinance was born in 2013, in the early stages of 2013, by which stage PayPal was a teenager. But as we know, it wasn't a troublesome teenager. It was a teenager starting on a tremendous journey internationally. Through Fintech Ireland, a group that I'm involved with, we map the fintech regime, or the ecosystem, I should call it. Now, that ecosystem, just briefly, the largest sector is payments, followed by regulatory technology, then followed by credit and lending. So here today, we've got payments in the form of PayPal, credit and lending in the form of LinkedFinance. We've seen e-commerce winners and losers. Those selling travel goods and travel associated products have dropped. Those selling disposable gloves and fitness equipment have seen their market share increase. And of course, we've had all those payment facilitators helping in that area. Another big topic, of course, is ensuring that liquidity flows into the market. And I'm sure, as Niall will have a number of views on, the idea of governments getting behind putting money into the economy, and not just using authorised banks and chartered banks, but also using specialist fintech companies that can get money into the hands of the SMEs often far faster and quicker than the current infrastructure. We've seen lots of volatility in the markets as well, of course, and sometimes that volatility is good for certain fintechs, and in other cases it hasn't been good. And I think it's fair to say that COVID has also shown some business models that haven't or were not going to work, and have also unmasked some awful things over in one member state with one of the large payment companies as well. Investment in Fintech earlier this week was released that Fintech is the third largest area for venture capital funding in Ireland in Q2, and it followed both science companies and startups. But not all startups are enjoying investment. First round startups are struggling to raise that money, and you'll see that in this week in all the press. So without further ado, I would like to now introduce you to Annette Hickey. Now, Annette is Vice President, EMA for Customer Solutions at PayPal. And Annette, I wonder whether you might just do a brief introduction of yourself and what it is that you do and your interest in the topic of the future of finance and fintech.
Thanks, Peter, for the intro there. So we said I'm Annette and I work in PayPal. I'm with the organisation for the last almost 6 years now. PayPal started up in Ireland in 2003 and at the time had 25 employees. We're now up to over 2,000 employees based across our two centres in Dublin and Dundalk, and I lead the CS organisation, which is about a third of those employees. And here we look after our customers in EMEA. So we service all the customers in EMEA through 17 different languages. And that's the job that I do every day. And I suppose the interest in the topic here today is, we have seen unprecedented growth in our world, the payments industry in 2020, and I'm hoping to be able to discuss that with you guys today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Annette. Niall, sir, over to you, CEO at LinkedFinance, and a bit more about yourself and also the business, please, Niall.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, as you say, I am Niall Dorrian, CEO of LinkedFinance. I held that role since May 2016. So it's been an exciting number of years in terms of the evolution of lending. From my own background, prior to that, I worked in telecoms for about 12 years. So again, looking at the explosion that telecoms sort of brought to society, I suppose I'm looking to be part of the replicating that growth and activity and change and innovation on the fintech scene. At LinkedFinance, we believe that fast and efficient access to capital is vital to sustainable economic growth, and our mission is to transform how lending works within SMEs. I think innovation has affected all our lives in every different aspect, but what has been slow is, in my view, particularly around business lending, and that's what LinkedFinance does. It's a technology platform that brings together SMEs who are looking for growth capital and investors, and from ordinary members of the public, from investing €50 to hundreds of thousands of euros, to give them a return. I think particularly in the context of very low interest rates or zero interest rates that has been here for quite a number of years, we're creating that different asset class that gives people an opportunity to be in control of their own investment. That financial inclusion is something that we believe strongly in, that they're in complete control of what their money's doing. They can pick and choose what businesses that they support. So it's an interesting space, but it's a long way to go. And I'm really interested in talking about where is this sector going, and what are LinkedFinance's plans in the lending space.
Thanks very much, Niall. I mean, an interesting observation is that you both have telecoms careers, and is it a surprise that you both ended up in fintech, whether it's payments or credit lending, or is it actually just a natural evolution of that technology now being pointed towards financial services? Who would like to start with that one?
I'm happy to give a shot at that one, Peter. When I was in telecoms, I moved actually from the food industry, from FMCG into the telecom sector, and that was the place to go, and it was where all of the innovation was happening. So it's no surprise that the move to fintech, which is where now innovation is really rife, and I suppose that's what interests me, and that's really, I think, where the cutting edge of business is. So I think the evolution was, quite expected, really.
Thank you very much. Niall?
Yeah, I think pretty similar to that in the sense of I seem to be attracted to disruptive industries and trying to change things, and certainly telecoms and I think the sort of opportunity of new telecoms companies and liberalization of different markets that I was involved with in certainly the Caribbean, Central America, and bringing competition to markets. And I suppose that's when I returned to Ireland, that's what I was looking for, is opportunity to do that. And fintech is very clearly a space of innovation and disruption and just bringing additional competition. And I think in financial services, it is, particularly in Ireland, I think well overdue.
Well, thanks for that, Niall. And speaking of disruption, obviously COVID-19, the pandemic, is a massive disruption. As we spoke about, it's a health crisis leading to a financial crisis and many other things. How, for example, there, Annette, have you been able to help your customers, say particularly the merchants? We have seen some merchants do well given what they are selling. We've also seen merchants never having a proper online presence. Are they gravitating towards you?
In their droves, thank goodness, Peter. At PayPal, globally, we have seen our biggest quarter in Q2 in the history of PayPal, and we put 23 million new customers on our platform, which is greater than the total number of new customers from 2016, just to give you a comparison there. And obviously, when COVID hit, many of our customers were already in a position to react and pivot, but some customers hadn't actually made that leap, and COVID obviously has encouraged them to do that. And those who are on the platform, we have done some additional activities, such as seller protection. We've lengthened the length of time for that for our sellers. There is the introduction of a contactless payment, a system called the QR codes, which is, it's not new in the industry, but certainly is something that's been very welcome, particularly by our smaller businesses. And because our customers are saying that they're really keen to support locally, and that's the way through this recession. From our coffee shops to our farmers markets to all the various different local businesses, to have this contactless payment solution is something that the customers are crying out for, and we've been able to provide them, and that's really helped our merchants grow.
I mean, the point about the QR code is very interesting, and as you say, it's not something which is new or novel. I remember seeing these in China way back in 2013 or 4, actually maybe later, maybe it was 2015, but you certainly can't miss the QR code now. Even when you walk into the restaurant, it's the only way to access the menu in a lot of cases.
Ireland has been very slow to adopt it, actually. This year has seen a phenomenal growth in it, from even if you're getting a takeaway delivered to your door, it's an opportunity for people then to be able to take QR codes from the delivery man as well. So it's been phenomenal.
And then taking from that, I'm looking at you here, Niall. Liquidity. SMEs in most economies, including like in Ireland, probably makes up anywhere between 90 to 95% of economic activity. Of course, we have number of companies would be about 90 to 95% of all companies, albeit some of the bigger international companies and listed companies have a lot of economic activity. The SMEs, in your view, still the backbone? And if they are, how are you supporting them, and what are they looking for from you?
I totally agree with that statement. It is, the lifeblood of any economy, and particularly in Ireland, small business. And I think, there's no doubt it's been a hugely challenging time over the last 6 months since March and the lockdown. I think, different industries were hit in different ways, and some catastrophically so, and other industries have prospered, and we've seen quite a lot of that in terms of innovation and pivoting your business and changing your business model has become quite prevalent. But I think the immediate reaction was very short-termism view. We took some very aggressive and proactive steps around payment holidays in those early days immediately after shutdown. it's just an unprecedented event. I mean, businesses going from doing very well to zero revenue the next day is just incredible. I don't think that ever happened in our history before. So, our initial reaction was to support businesses through that period. As I say, we offered 2 to 3 month payment holidays straight off the bat. We then looked at, well, how do we give access to capital? We introduced a delayed start loan that would have no payments for the first 3 months of that facility. But I think, there's been lots of initiatives and lots of opportunities from the government, which has helped cash flows, particularly the wage subsidy scheme, the revenue initiatives, that you delayed VAT payments, delayed PAYE. So I think in the short term, cash flows for a lot of the SMEs that we've seen have been okay. I think we're now coming into that stage around what are the medium term and longer term solutions. And I think this week we're seeing the capital guarantee scheme being launched.
Yes.
Probably well overdue, if the truth be told, where a lot of our European peers are well down that track already. But it is welcomed, and I think as SMEs start to look at what are my medium-term plans, in terms of investment and growth, I think that's going to become a critical solution.
It's very interesting because, if you look at it here, people are either bundling or they're unbundling when they create new businesses. So you're both PayPal and LinkedFinance both work in areas where I guess one could argue it's unbundling of a bank service, okay? Banks did payments, banks did credit and lending. But a lot of fintechs were born out of the last crisis, yet it seemed initially that government support was going into the banks. And funnily enough, all these new fintechs that were on board 10 years ago, or coming out less than 10 years ago, were suddenly being precluded. I'm not looking for you to give a political statement here or anything, because I know that was the case in the UK and also in the US. But your industry is being recognised now as being integral parts of the economy is a real change in the mindset from where we used to think about it in terms of only being banks that were running the economy. We really are turning into banking as a service as opposed to banks. I think from that, what I might like to do is just ask a question here. Getting the digitization of the consumer. How have you found them? Are they embracing this? For a lot of us that may not be used to doing all our transactions online, it took us a lot of trust, right, to do this. How are you finding those customers? How are you finding it to onboard those customers? I don't mean in a regulatory sense. I mean like winning them over. And how do you keep that trust?
Will I start?
Yeah, please.
All right. Well, I suppose with COVID, customers had to immediately look at different ways. Consumers very quickly turned away against cash, and where cash used to be king, not anymore. Certainly it's digital first, both from a consumer and from the entrepreneur's sense. And digital finance has probably accelerated 3 to 5 years with the latest crisis that we find ourselves in. But what we are seeing from customers, and we can really see this, we ran some research with Ipsos, and communities are really coming together, and people are buying locally and want to really support locally, as I said. But 65% of customers want cashless opportunity, and 40% of customers really don't want to handle cash. That's 2 million people in Ireland have said they don't want to handle cash. So it's a huge opportunity for us. And the opportunity for PayPal then is to make onboarding of customers as easy as possible. You don't have to walk into a bank. The online sign up is pretty handy. It's all obviously online. It's convenient. And our USP really is around the risk mitigation platform. So customers are really finding that PayPal is very, very safe. And a lot have been used to us, buying the odd thing on a website and not having to give their credit card details over the website. but we're seeing that the users, where they used to use us 3 or 4 times a year, are now using us on a monthly basis, which is, fantastic. And where, our opportunity here is even greater than that, to make it weekly or daily, for it to be I suppose, the channel of choice from a cash perspective for our customers.
Oh, that's a good point, because there's a lot of cost in acquiring a customer. Of course, as people say, losing a customer costs you 5 times as much to replace them. I also would just say, what was interesting when you mentioned cashless, you mentioned cash there. The European Central Bank did say not so long ago that 75% of all transactions in the euro currency still happen by way of cash. So a huge market potential there. Niall, for yourself there, we get information from PayPal because they're a publicly listed company. But what are you seeing? We don't get that sort of information from the smaller companies like yourself, or non-listed companies. So how are you finding the customers, the trust level? Are they turning to you in droves? Are you finding that repeat business?
Well, I think, our business model, we have 2 sides of the equation. We have the SMEs on one side who are looking to borrow. And as I say, that demand has slowed through the COVID period, as there is an inherent nervousness in the marketplace. I think as we move out of the summer and into Q4, and some of the government subsidies will be removed or wound down, we will see that demand pick up, there's no doubt. But on the other side of the equation, we have consumers. We fund the loans through the platform, through both retail money, just members of the public, and institutional money. And I think what was really surprising to me was the strength of the retail demand to fund loans. We talked about the build-up of cash, the savings. I think this crisis is not born out of debt that it would have been a decade ago. So there's lots of cash in the system. There's lots of people with savings, but they're not making any return on those savings. So the demand from our retail customers to fund loans was very strong through the last 5 or 6 months. So that was very encouraging and somewhat surprising, particularly in uncertain economic times. So I think that it gives us great encouragement for the future around our business model and the demand, and creating that asset class for in many ways the Irish investor. It is all about trust. It is all about transparency. I think we go out of our way to be very transparent around our loan book performance, your investment portfolio performance. We give options and flexibility around who do you support, who do you invest in, how much you invest, what is your risk profile as an investor. So I think all these things, put us in good stead for the future in terms of, driving our business forward. I think, we're still at the early stages of the really big part of the lending scene moving away from the pillar banks, and I think there's huge growth opportunities for us there.
And I guess that's an area you're focused on for the next 12 to 18 months there too, Niall. You're both, obviously you're going to be achieving a lot more scale, delivering the services online. We're moving to a more digital-centric consumer. You're all in the right space. I just have one quick question because we have to wrap up now, and I'm slightly going to make it a little bit softer, but I think it's a very important question. I just wanted to ask you, how are the employees faring up at this difficult time? And what are the sort of things you think about as being leaders of your business when it comes to your employees? Just a very short answer, because we're pretty much out of time.
I could talk for a long time about this, Peter, but I've just come from a mandatory wellness day on Friday, which we had for all employees across the globe, which was wonderful. But our employees obviously have moved from in the office to home, and we don't have any plans to actually go back into sites for 2020. We'll review it in 2021. We have different channels available to our teammates in CS, for example. We would have been primarily phone-based, who are now primarily messaging-based. This phone available as well for people with young children. It was really important that they were able to continue to work, and it can be difficult at home, as you know. We have been making COVID relief available for our employees who need to take extra time off for this crisis. and generally, making sure that they have a comfortable seat and that they're able to work at home in a safe way. So that has been really, really important. And our employees now have been, our feedback has been phenomenal. And the next piece really is, well, how do I progress my career from at home? So a lot of effort now going into making sure that we retain our really valuable asset, which is our employees and all that knowledge, but making sure they're able to continue to grow their careers while not being actually visible in the office. So,
thank you for that. Niall, anything you'd like to add to that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a never-ending debate, in terms of what's going to happen from an office point of view. But I mean, from LinkedFinance's point of view, we were well organised in terms of moving, at the lockdown to fully remote working. All our systems and technology is based in the cloud, so that worked pretty well. But I think, our priority now and focus now is actually giving people the opportunity and the flexibility to come back to the office. I think what we're finding is there is a demand to come back. I don't subscribe to this view that everybody's going to work from home and the commercial office is dead. Because people want social engagement, they want to come back to the office. So what we're focused on now is how do we make that happen? Whether that's 2 or 3 days a week, creating the environment and the safe environment and the social distancing and all the stuff that goes with that is our focus at the minute, to give people the option. If they want to come back to the office, then they're very welcome to do so with the right structure around that. And I think that's our plan, and that's the feedback that we've got, that people still, some people that have long commutes, I think, yes, would still like to work from home, but generally the finding was that people wanted to get back in and enjoy that social interaction and communication that I suppose you do somewhat miss, during the lockdown.
Perfect. Listen, I think because what you're really saying there is, look, your line of business, whether it's online or not, has the same issues as as face-to-face businesses or different businesses outside the digital economy. You're both great ambassadors for PayPal and LinkedFinance, respectively. I know you're on LinkedIn. I'm not going to offer that you're going to connect with everybody that may want to reach out to you, but I'm sure you'll be in big demand after this session. I'd like to remind everybody that after this we go to a Q&A session in the chat room, so please keep an eye out for that. And I'd just like to say thank you very much to Annette and to Niall, PayPal and to LinkedFinance for your very valuable time and insights today. Thank you very much, guys.